Welcome, everyone. My name is Lucy Fernandez, and I'm a manager at Jobs for the Future. And part of my role at JFF is to help lead our strategy around extended reality technology and also lead insights for our recent meta-funded work, which also focused on XR. And so today, my colleagues and I, we are hosting this mini-series, a two-part series, and you'll hear directly from small business and education leaders around why extended reality technology is such a great tool for skill development. And so, first things first, it ties very closely to JFF's mission, which is to drive transformation of the US workforce and education system to achieve equitable economic advancement for all. And so JFF and JFF Labs, we care deeply about XR because we envision a future in which all workers, especially workers at small businesses, especially frontline workers, in which they have access to these leading edge training solutions. And we see XR technology as a promising and, in some cases, proven tool to enable tangible skill development and advancement for workers, as well as hit on those bottom line gains for businesses. And we know through our work in this space that engaged employees who have continuous opportunities to upskill and to learn on the job will contribute to small businesses' bottom line goals, especially around retention, productivity, revenue, growth, and more. And so Jobs for the Future and Meta have been working together as partners to better understand and showcase the potential that XR technologies have to transform learning and work. And together, we are demonstrating that these XR solutions, they will catalyze economic advancement, especially for people from populations facing systemic barriers that really do limit their access to these leading edge technologies. And so specifically, in partnership with Meta, we recently concluded a virtual reality pilot with small businesses in which we implemented two different solutions. And our primary goal, working with these 21 small businesses in very diverse regions across the US, our primary goal was to identify and test and share specific use cases for small businesses in which they could use VR to support workers to develop their skills that would both help the workers themselves advance and also help businesses grow and succeed. And so today, in our first session, you'll be hearing from one of the small businesses that we worked with through this pilot. And so first up to join us, we'll have my colleague, Sarah Amanpour, and she will be interviewing Richard Acosta, who is the Senior Vice President of Innovation at Grant Associates. So thank you again for joining us, and I hope you enjoy their conversation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zara Monpour. I'm a senior advisor at JFF, and I've had the pleasure of being on this project for the last couple of years. And I have the pleasure of introducing everyone to Richard Acosta today. Richard is the Senior Vice President of Innovation at Grant Associates, and he's based in New York City. Is that still true, Richard? The last time we talked about
that is still true. Hi, everyone.
Awesome. So it's hard to believe that you and I met a year ago. I was actually looking through some trackers this morning, trying to put some other deliverables for this project together, and saw that it was actually May 3rd that you and I had our first meeting. So it's almost to the day. So a lot has happened, and we have a lot to talk about today. But before we do that, I'd love to learn a little bit, share with the audience a little bit more about Grant Associates and the wonderful work that you all do. I've had the pleasure of working with you all at JFF, outside of JFF. I know the incredible work that you all do in New York City and all over the country. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that and just your role in the organization.
Sure. So Grant Associates is a national workforce development company. We were established in 1997, so we've been doing this work for over 25 years. We've served over 80 communities to date and helped over 1.25 million individuals pursue training, find employment. It's been great. I've been with the organization for about 15 years. Right now, I provide executive oversight to some of our programs here in New York, in Pittsburgh. I help launch some of our programs out in California. And as Senior Vice President of Innovation, I get to have fun opportunities like this pilot to explore new ways to approach the work that we do every day.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's an amazing number. 1.25, you said, million people. That's a lot of work. So congratulations to you all. That's amazing. So how does Grant Associates approach training? I know that as an organization, you value training. It's what you do in the field also, but as internally amongst yourselves, amongst your employees, how do you approach training as an organization?
So we take professional development really seriously. Definitely being workforce development professionals, it's our vocation, and we kind of have to model the way, so to speak. One of the other things that we pride ourselves on is we often hire for potential rather than experience. And so training somebody that has the key competencies and characteristics that we're looking for into the ideal employee that can make maximum impact on the job seekers and businesses we serve has always been really important to us. And so for that first onboarding period, that first 90 days, we've got a pretty robust onboarding schedule for our new hires. And throughout that year and every year after, new employees, managers, directors, and so on are required to earn 30 professional development hours every year. And that requirement goes up depending on your level of seniority. So managers have to achieve 33 hours, directors 36 hours. And that is made up of a mix of different offerings. Some of them are offerings that we develop internally that we think are relevant. Some of them we bring in outside resources that we think are valuable depending on the role that we're developing. And some is driven directly by the employee themselves. Each of our staff is able to identify a professional development plan for themselves every year, in which they identify 2 growth areas for themselves they want to pursue, and their manager identifies 1. And they use that professional development plan as kind of their roadmap for their own progress and development over the course of the year. So this is all supported by kind of our corporate infrastructure. We have a director of training that's responsible in supporting individual staff, managers, and directors, and helping to develop those skill sets that we're looking for, and also keeping an eye on how we're effectively able to introduce customers to training. And credential-based opportunities, vocational training that is going to lead to viable career pathways for them.
That's great. So obviously it's front and center for you all, both internally and externally in the work you do. And have you all ever used VR for any type of training internally or externally, or any sort of other technology that you think is relevant here?
So VR specifically, I think this was probably this pilot, our first foray into using VR for internal staff training. What we've done in the past is, as part of kind of a recruitment strategy, we've done 360-degree tours through video with our centers, where you can put, one of those cardboard viewers on, put your phone into the viewer, and be able to look around our offices. We thought that was valuable for potential employees to be able to have that experience, and also for partners, right, to just kind of see what it might feel like to walk into one of our offices if they couldn't do it directly. But this was actually our first time as an organization approaching VR as a tool that we could use for staff development. And when the opportunity presented itself, we were really excited about it.
That's awesome. So obviously already on board with technology as a tool for training and sort of pushing in that direction, which is part of the reason why we wanted to partner with you. But can you tell us what made you jump into this pilot? What made Grant Associates want to be part of this pilot with JFF and sort of test the boundaries of VR training within your organization? And you were actually a partner that both referred your businesses, your customers to us that you thought could benefit from this, and yourselves, your own employees came through this pilot with us. So from both perspectives, why did you choose to do that, and why did you jump in here?
Well, I think for our external business partners, we wanted to expose them to kind of the realm of what's possible right? And kind of outside of the traditional training landscape where maybe you're doing, desk side training or classroom-based training with your staff, how you could use technology to kind of expand the horizons of new employees coming in, but also how organizations think about training and how it might be able to expand their capacity, right? And one of the things that we know is that for organizations that are bringing new staff in, the investment in training in the beginning could be a heavy lift, right? Especially for a small to mid-sized organization where that person who's doing the training is also one of the staff that leads to your productivity, right? So having this VR resource where you could have the staff kind of participate in training on their own, have it be self-paced and self-directed, expanded the capacity a little bit of these smaller organizations, and also kind of gave people a sense of something that was new and exciting, right? I'm an early adopter of technology. And what we find is as you expose people to new tools, the anxiety related to technology for some people is reduced pretty significantly. And so we wanted to open up that possibility. And then for us as an organization, like I said, we got to, walk the walk, right? If we're promoting this as an opportunity for the businesses because we saw it as a value, we have to demonstrate that we thought it was a value internally as well. And, like I said, I'm an early adopter, so I was really excited to be able to explore it. I had my own, VR headset at home, and it's something that I was excited about. And so I could infuse that energy to the potential participants that were going to explore this tool with us.
And did those things happen? Did you see your businesses sort of expand their capacity, just get more comfortable with this type of opportunity, this type of technology? Did you yourselves feel like you were walking the walk and kind of moving in that direction? How did it go?
We did. I mean, what I find, from this engagement with different employers, it kind of whet their appetite towards technology and what technology can do. And I think we were right on this, the start of this wave of artificial intelligence and AI hitting the mainstream. And I think because technology was part of the conversation and what it could do for an organization, we had many employers come to us and ask us questions about, what are we doing with AI? How might this impact our business? And so it became that platform of conversation where people were comfortable engaging. And like I said, reduced a little bit of that fear that comes with the unknown, right? And for us as an organization, I think it did some of the same things, right? It exposed people to things that maybe they wouldn't have tried otherwise. It created a safe space for them to explore technology where they were supported and they had a peer group that they could ask questions. And again, it kind of exposed them to this wave of technology that continues to evolve every day in a place of excitement and reduce the fear, which is exactly what we wanted to do.
That's awesome. That's really great to hear. Makes it all worthwhile, right? And it's amazing what you can accomplish in just 1 year together. So hopefully a lot more of that to come. You mentioned one thing that I just want to take a little minute with, which is that building capacity of many of the businesses you serve. Do you serve primarily small businesses? This pilot, as you know, was focused on small businesses. Like, what does that look like for you? Who do you serve in terms of businesses and yourselves too? Where do you fall in that spectrum?
Yeah, so I think we probably have just passed the threshold of a small business, getting close to 500 employees ourselves. But I would say predominantly we're serving smaller businesses, and some of them are very small, right? Talking about a handful of people that run the entire organization. And in organizations like that, you have one person who's doing all the recruiting, is acting as the HR, is acting as payroll, and so the need to wear many hats is ever present, and providing something that could alleviate a little bit of that bandwidth for them, right? Yeah. Something that had a structure. That's one of the things that we also find is that not every employer has really thought through what structured onboarding might look like. Right? They've kind of been doing what has worked for them in the past. And so being able to present something that suggested a structure, right? Some tools that they could use and pull off the shelf and be able to help them kind of implement that, I thought was also valuable to help evolve them as an organization. And so, yeah, I would say probably the majority of the businesses we serve are smaller businesses. And in terms of job creation, that's where a lot of job creations happen. So by being able to help those businesses operate and expand, we create opportunities for the job seekers that we serve as well.
Absolutely. That is where all the new jobs come from, and why we're in here fighting for them. So, in terms of you, as we mentioned earlier, you're located in New York City. I know you guys have expanded nationally, and you have many locations now. But in New York City specifically, because that's where the majority of this pilot focused, are there any specific, it's a very unique market. It's obviously densely populated, obviously saturated in terms of business and competition. Lots of industries are represented. A very diverse workforce is fully accessible to businesses, and most businesses are dealing with that for all good reasons. Can you speak a little bit? Do you think there's specific opportunity for VR in New York, or specific challenges that New York presents to the VR training and other use cases for VR?
Sure. I think the one challenge and opportunity that VR presents. Space in New York City is a commodity, right? Like, we're so dense and so saturated with just bodies that not every employer has a dedicated training space, a designated classroom. VR creates unlimited virtual spaces, right? So using someone's desk and a headset, you could have a full classroom structure that avoids some of those logistical constraints that you might see. But the inverse to that is also true. For us, one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that people felt comfortable. And so we kind of identified dedicated space for engaging with the VR training so that they didn't feel like they were being watched or in a fishbowl, right? And so, many of our offices are open layout, and we wanted to give them some privacy so that they could feel more comfortable. Not every employer has the space available to be able to do that, right? So I think it presents opportunities because, again, in the virtual space, you don't have physical walls to contend with, but also in terms of comfort and use, being able to have a space that is designated and set aside where people could engage in the training and feel confident and comfortable with it, I think was an important consideration for us.
Yeah. Hopefully over time, though, that consideration will go down, right? Because as the hardware evolves, right, and just pure exposure, what we're seeing in our work at JFF is the more people are exposed to this, the less self-conscious they are, the less, right? But it is still in those early stages, especially at work. Like, if we do put it on, it's at home to be goofy and play, do get some gaming. But at work, people are very self-conscious still around it, and something that we saw throughout the pilot. So really excellent points. What do you see? We are a mission-driven organization, as you know, JFF. I know a lot of your work is mission-driven also, and we want to make sure that the work we're doing is serving populations that are underrepresented or just providing equitable economic opportunity to all. How do you think VR could play a role in that, in terms of access and opportunity for different populations, especially those that are underrepresented?
Sure. One of the things that I appreciated about this VR training, and I did a couple of modules myself, is that it didn't once you kind of got through the initial startup, it did not require any typing. It didn't require, you could just engage with it with your natural language. With, many of the customers that we serve, there is a bit of a digital divide, right? Where people are not necessarily comfortable even typing on a computer or navigating through a computer. But with something like this, you could actually get them started and they could just have a natural conversation with a virtual avatar, right? And so that barrier is diminished pretty significantly. I also think in the VR space, but just more broadly in the technology space, I think there is a huge capacity for accessibility, right? In terms of, I was watching a video the other day of someone remotely driving a tractor trailer, right? And so they're not on the farm, they're just using a computer to be able to do that. And so this, augmented reality, virtual reality experience and being able to operate remotely opens up many doors for people who maybe have mobility challenges, or also connecting people with opportunities that may not be geographically close, right?
Yeah.
It could be states away even, but if you have that baseline technology, you could still engage. And so I think all of those things present a really exciting opportunity to have people connect to, initiatives, to avenues, to training, to employment that they would have otherwise not even known existed.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points. So on that same, you already mentioned a couple of use cases, which to me are exciting. But, whether it's in personal life or in work life, but even around this issue of training, are there any specific use cases that you see for VR that really excite you, that you think there's more potential for?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the skilled trades, I think there's a huge avenue for VR. You know, we one of the programs that we support is a building restoration program, and you find a lot of people are interested in the training, not realizing that they're afraid of heights until they're on the work site, right?
Yeah.
And so if you can't get up a scaffold, that's probably not the job for you. I think having people get some exposure to that and really identify their comfort level is really important. And so many of the other skilled trades require comfort in unusual spaces, right? Whether you're in a tight tunnel or, you know, you're crawling through some ductwork in order to enact a repair. That's something important to know before you invest the time and energy into a training program. I think also, you know, one of the things I was really excited about with this pilot was the embodied labs component, where participants were able to kind of experience what life was like from someone that was different from themselves. And in, you know, ambulatory health services, being able to build that sense of empathy with their patients in a way that's safe, right, and doesn't risk a patient, I think is hugely valuable in terms of a use case. And then also customer service, right? I think the avatars were really impressive, and they're only going to get better. And you know, the challenge of helping a customer solve a complex problem or dealing with a customer that was upset, how do you de-escalate that in a way where you could just unplug if it got too intense? You know, some of those skills you're only going to learn in practice, and the VR space allows you to do that and come back to it again and again without, you know, risking a customer interaction and in a space where you could distance yourself if you realize it really wasn't for you. And so I think that, you know, exposure across all of those different parallels would be really valuable. And also something that I see as always useful, sales skills, right? How do you deal with opposition? How do you have a persuasive argument? Like these interactions with the virtual avatars were really, you know, engaging and immersive, and being able to demonstrate and practice those skills, you know, would be valuable across multiple industries.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because when I engage with people that are not as familiar with this technology or haven't really used that, and tell them what I do, the first thing that comes up, like their guard goes up, and they have all these, like, all the risks that could come around this, right? But the flip side of that is that there's all these wonderful things that could actually reduce risk for populations, businesses, safety concerns, all of these types of things, like you've mentioned today, that if we're used in the right way, like any technology, really could bring those benefits to the workforce and elsewhere. So just want to end with this question. If you know, a year ago we met, you were in it, you jumped right in with us, and we were so grateful for that. But if another business was sort of on that line of deciding whether to do this, whether to jump into this, what would you want to share with them? What would you want to tell them?
I think you need to have a certain level of excitement at every level of the organization, right? You know, I think it's more difficult if this is something that's only implemented from the top down, right? And so, you know, we had champions on the ground that were excited about the technology, that could talk to their colleagues and peers about what they could do with it. And so we found that really led to increased adoption. And also, you know, the VR component and the training component is really important, but it's something that individuals were doing on their own. To be able to have a cohort that you could debrief with and say, hey, what did you think about this? Or how did you answer that question? Really reinforce some of the learning for us. And so I would think through kind of how do you support this beyond, you know, once the headset comes off, right? And how do you have those people that are really kind of, you know, championing the effort and generating that excitement at every level of the organization, so that you're, you know, really kind of entrenching the buy-in throughout.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. I wish we had more time, but that's all the time we have for today. So I'm going to end it with that. I just want to again thank you for your partnership this past year, and your time today, and thank Grant Associates for the wonderful work that you're doing and for going on this adventure with us.
Of course.
We're very grateful. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Richard. That was a wonderful conversation. And next up, my colleague, Jen Giffords, director at JFF, she will be interviewing Jolie Martin. Enjoy.
Hi, everyone. Let's get this part of the conversation started. As a reminder, my name is Jen, and I'm a director here at JFF. And I'm so thrilled today to be joined by Jolie, and we're excited to talk to you about virtual reality and how VR can support skills training and skills development for workers in businesses. So, Jolie, let's just start by having you introduce yourself, your role, and a little bit about what your company does.
Sure. So I'm Julie Martin. I am a business advisor with Florida Makes. And, at the end of the day, we help manufacturers accomplish whatever it is that might be causing them some challenges or how they want to expand, grow, whether that's people processes or production processes, cyber, whatever that might look like. So I'm honored to be here with you, Jen, and the team. So can't wait to see how the conversation comes together.
Yeah, me too. And for a little bit of context for the audience, Jolie and Florida Makes helped connect us with a handful of small businesses to participate in our virtual reality pilot that you heard a little bit about in the introduction. So we had the privilege of working with some of your businesses to implement Tailspin on the virtual reality headsets with your workers. And I wonder, actually, maybe that's a good place to start. Just tell us a little bit about the first time you were introduced to VR. What made you excited about your businesses having the chance to do training with VR with JFF?
Yeah, so great question. I am not the typical VR kind of person, but when I first was, when I think about VR, I think about my nieces and nephews and playing their games and doing all of those, cool things that they do today with computers. But I was first exposed to virtual reality at an expo, and one of the exhibitors had this system there that was working through 5Sing and some lean methodologies. And so he hands me this headset and I put it on and I'm like, oh my gosh, this was so cool. Because I'm working on this CNC machine and I'm making sure everything is where it belongs and that everything is safe and the product is doing what, the machine's doing what it's supposed to. And it was fascinating because I'm moving, and of course, I'm moving in this virtual reality world. And some of my, business associates with Florida Makes were there, and they got great joy out of watching this happen, because the process is rather interesting. If you're watching it and not doing it, it's even more entertaining, I'm sure. But the first thing I thought about, Jen, when I took the headset off was, oh my gosh, this could be so applicable to our manufacturers, and the fact that we're bringing, younger people into machining and manufacturing in the different environments, and how can we use this to really move our workforce forward, especially in, maybe some strategic areas where we've struggled with training and turnover and all of those things. I just thought it would be a great way to move the needle.
Absolutely. And since you mentioned it, let's dive in there. So many uses for this sort of technology in manufacturing, whether that's helping with training folks, which is our focus, or helping with other parts of the manufacturing process.
Yeah.
So, and as the audience might know, manufacturing as an industry, the top priority is production, both production quality and production quantity.
Yeah.
So I wonder, it seems like, pulling people off the line to do training of any sort, never mind training in kind of a newer modality like VR, that seems really risky. And I wonder, maybe you could share with our audience some of the benefits to manufacturing companies to investing this time in their workers and in training in the first place.
Yeah, I think the biggest items I saw were the virtual reality modules, if you will, were bite-sized pieces. They could stop a little bit and, pause and go do something else or come back or that. So I thought the risk of just pulling someone out of what they needed to do for a day or more, it wasn't the same. It's not like sending someone to an offsite training or, sending someone for certification or something like that where they had to leave for a certain period of time. This could be handled a little differently, more strategically, if you will, because you could manage it by allowing other people to cover that specific area or work around some of that. So I think from a time standpoint, it really worked for the various companies that participated. I think the larger item was, ensuring virtual reality is still new. And so for some team members, they struggled a little bit with, what is it? How's it working? What's going on? So I think from that standpoint, making sure that we have the right team members involved with the VR training was maybe a little more problematic than, the VR training itself.
Mm. That's a great point that, oftentimes trainings require folks to travel or to be pulled away for a whole day or hours at a time. And these modules they're bite-sized. They can be done, in a relatively quick period of time, from 10 to 20 minutes. And I wonder too, do you talk with companies about there's a short-term benefit, with workers taking these trainings and learning skills. But I wonder if, looking at the long-term benefit too of investing in training now, and do you help companies kind of see that long-term benefit to investing in something like this now? It might seem like it's taking away time, but that pays dividends in the long run too. So that seems like a balance to pay attention to.
It is. And that's a great question. Part of what we teach a lot of companies that we work with is how do we monetize that value? Because sometimes we don't always realize how impactful something really is until we put some numbers to it. So if I think about the cost of training, taking someone off the floor, I've got man hours, I've got, different things. But if I also have some reasonable expectation of the goal, the reward, the impact that I'm going to get out of that training, then I can compare that, right? I can make sure that my goal, my value, the impact that I was expecting really comes to fruition, and that I'm tracking that to ensure that it does. Any training, I mean, how often have you gone to a workshop and you learn great things, but you go back to the office and you do it the same way you've always done it, right? So part of it is ensuring that we have some checks and balances, something in place to ensure that the training is actually being used and the benefit from the training is being captured. And that doesn't happen just because the VR training took place. It's because leadership is committed to using that training in a way that helps the company move forward. So
Absolutely.
it's not just the person going through the training.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I know, something that Florida Makes and JFF were helping support the companies with too, is what's your goal in starting this? And how are you
Yeah.
measuring that throughout? Exactly. Let's keep
Yeah.
with manufacturing as an industry for the next question too. So another common thing in manufacturing, it's one of those industries that deals with seasonality, from holiday seasons, from summer periods, and
Yeah.
fluctuations in demand, maybe new clients, larger, smaller orders than expected. I wonder how should a business think about timing for introducing VR training based on some of their other business priorities in the business calendar?
Sure. Training is always important, just like safety or quality. It's always important. The key with training is, not all companies put the same, level of importance or focus on it, even if they're struggling with different things. So if if their environment is cyclical and they have those lulls that they can predict in some way, of course, they should be using their historical data to help them with that. But if they can predict it in some way, then scheduling that training proactively around those cycles helps them add the most bang, the most value for that downtime that they can then capture, right? As things ramp back up, we can capture those improvements, that, course corrections, those goals and things that we had expected out of the training. We can see firsthand how it is being impactful as their environment starts to ramp back up. But they have to be clear on what those items are so we can be measuring and being, right, monitoring what's happening. If they're not cyclical and they don't really have those lulls, because we have manufacturers who, are pretty busy all the time, then it's a matter of really understanding your production schedule, how you can flex people across your environment to cover machines so that someone can leave the floor for, as you said, that 20 minutes, 30 minutes at a time, because it doesn't have to be all together. So how do we plan that so that the virtual reality training can be on point, get things accomplished, help move the needle for the company with whatever that goal might be, but still understanding that production is still going on and we're not missing a beat as that happens.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I love how you're highlighting, so it's each company determining for themselves, it's a strategic and intentional choice and planning, but that it's, training itself,
Yes.
and especially in VR, can be flexible to meet the needs of, as you're saying, many types of companies. And I love that you bring up data
Love
too.
that
So
part.
whether that's to help predict the seasons or the fluctuations and to help them measure.
Yes.
So that's a great.
Yeah. So often, right, we can shoot from the hip, but that's not necessarily giving us the right information. So using your data and historical evidence, I always encourage all of our companies to do that.
And before we move into another topic, I wonder, is there anything else you want the audience to know or think about in terms of how VR can support manufacturing, whether it's for training or whether it's other purposes?
I would say the only thing I would add is that I'm finding, right, VR training can be, there's a lot of topics as I'm finding with working with Eugen and others. It's not just production. It's not just quality. It's soft skills. It's, all of these things that we want to bring into a company or an environment, a situation. So I would encourage everyone to think outside the box and not think that VR training is only this narrow piece, because it's not. It's pretty broad in scope at this point.
That's a great point. And I know we had manufacturing and other companies join us who, even though those technical skills are so important, they also benefited from, like you said, those core skills of communication or leading a team or in the events that you are dealing with customers or clients. So that's a great point.
Yep.
Wonderful. Let's think about, so the other piece that's intersecting here is your companies are in the manufacturing industry, and then you're also based in Florida. So Florida is a big state, lots of various regions and factors to consider. Is there anything important for the audience to know about when you all decided to try this out with VR? What's important for them to know about the businesses you're working with, whether it's anything about the geography or the location, and things that your business has had to keep in mind, specifically being in this location?
Yeah, so probably the biggest items is, Florida is a manufacturing state. We have over 26,000 manufacturers. Everything from your small mom and pop, 1 to 2 people working out of their garage, to, companies with thousands of team members. And so finding some companies that were small enough that they could be impactful, but large enough to really benefit from, making the time, doing the modules and the training, and then having a game plan on how to implement what they've learned is what we were looking at across the board. The larger companies can do some of this on their own, so they didn't necessarily need JFF support to do that. So we were looking for companies that would really benefit from the pilot, open up new ideas of training that they had never considered really prior to this, and really just help them figure out how to use it into the future, even, just what they learned through the pilot, how can they apply it and work forward. The companies were all different types of manufacturers. The companies who participated in the pilot from Florida, we had aerospace, we had energy, we had a variety of different organizations, and they all took unique things away from the pilot, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, that is. And I think you had boating too. It's really, and as you're speaking to I think both Florida Makes and JFF share a mission to help support businesses, smaller to medium-sized businesses who might not be able to do this on their own. So to help introduce this and then plug it into small businesses and giving them the same access and benefits as maybe larger companies or other well-resourced companies. So I appreciate you calling that out. What about the employees at the business? What's important to them when using VR for training, whether that's age considerations or language options or something about the environment? Yep. What was important to the employees participating in this?
Yeah, so there were a number of items that kind of bubbled up to the surface through the pilot. One, absolutely language, right? Being able to have English, Spanish, whatever available as part of that was important. Here in Florida, we have many Spanish speaking team members, especially as we move into Miami and some of the other areas. The other item was some of our more tenured individuals found that they struggled a little bit using the VR, just because they aren't as computer motivated as some of our younger team members. It's not that they don't know how to use a computer, because we all have phones and stuff today, but putting that headset on and such, some people found that a little scary. Is that the right word? Uncomfortable, right? So working through a little of that. Some of the companies had to do that because their team members have some tenure. And the other item was on a positive, right? Because those were a couple of the little negative things that bubbled up. But from a positive standpoint, all of the team members felt honored, if you will, right, to be part of it. They felt like their company was really looking to them to go through this training and provide input on, is this something we might want to roll out on a larger scale? What were their takeaways? What were the lessons learned? And so the team members really felt empowered to give that feedback to their companies, in a positive, is this something we can use as we move forward? How would we use this? There were some great discussions that took place around that.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that feeling that your company is investing in you, when employees feel more engaged and like they're invested in, that's helping themselves. They're getting skills for their own careers, but it's helping the business too. So it's a win-win for both. And we tried to highlight that throughout the pilot as well. Like you're saying, it's helps on both sides. And to the challenges you presented, that's why, and I know we both feel this way, it's why it's important to get small businesses into the conversation now. So I know some people, emerging technologies, whether it's virtual reality or augmented reality, or even some of the conversations around AI, we know there's many questions and challenges to sort through, but we need all voices in those conversations. So to the point earlier about the size of companies, we want everyone involved so these challenges and suggestions for improvement can be worked in. So those are great. Well, I'm seeing we're almost out of time, but let me get in one more question. Looking ahead, what excites you the most if we look into the future
Mm.
about using virtual reality for training purposes, or maybe what you would recommend to other small businesses who are thinking about taking this journey, or to organizations like yourselves who are supporting small businesses on this journey?
Oh, wow. So, gosh, what can't virtual reality help with, really? Because it does make it so easy to bring material to the various environments, the various corporate cultures, the different types of organizations that we work with. And I, to go a step further, right? It doesn't matter what their product is, even for some of those classes or some of those modules. There are some that are, right? Doesn't matter what your product is, the soft skills, some of the leadership training, some of even quality to some degree doesn't matter what the product is, as long as we know how to measure, what, how to make sure we're producing a good part. On the flip side, I love the fact that the organization can pick certain modules that are very specific for them, and as the library of virtual reality classes, modules, material, right, continues to grow, it will make that easier and easier to customize that virtual reality learning experience for the organization and even for the department or the team member, because each team member is a little different. And now, instead of having a trainer come in to do this mass training, everyone gets the same class. Now we can really look at it as a customized solution for whoever that individual, whatever they might need to help them be more successful within their company. So I love the customization piece of that. I love the fact that the library is growing exponentially all the time, and thus just bringing more and more material to the companies, especially our small to mid companies, because they're not going to have an internal training team. They're not going to develop their own library, right? So we have to have solutions for those small to mid companies so that they can remain competitive and grow.
Mm, absolutely. And that's a great point about the personalization, the individual learning journey that workers can go through using this. And you also brought up a point about access. So if someone is in a more rural or remote region, if it's possible for them to get their hands on a headset, they can be connected with the same quality of training content as well. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that point as well. Well, it sounds like we have a lot to look forward to in the future. I just want to end by thanking our audience. Thank you for listening in. But Jolie and Florida Makes, thank you so much for your partnership. You helped connect us with these fabulous small businesses and really learned alongside us to make efforts like this a success. So I hope we will get to work together in the future. And thank you for sharing your insights today with our audience.
Happy to do it. And I can't wait for Florida Makes and JFF to have long, long future together in helping our manufacturers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jen and Jolie, and for everyone who was able to tune in with us today for the first part of this conversation. And we hope that you'll also come back this Thursday, May 23rd from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern for even more insights from regional leaders within the education and workforce sphere. Thank you for joining us today.